So there's a lot of interest amongst large oil and gas companies as they kind of prepare for the energy transition to kind of have access to these businesses where you are bringing in low carbon, carbon-free electrons into their portfolios. Is there? You should have been here yesterday. We thought it was a chemicals and petrochemicals focused conference. The second half of the day we spent talking about how expensive low carbon power is going to be for chemical and petrochemical. That's what you were referring to, like it's in the top 3 in terms of OPEX, right? Electricity is right up there. But one of the key points that came out of the conversation yesterday was as the chemical industry decarbonizes, the amount of low carbon power that they need is going to rise, and as that demand rises, prices are going to follow that. They're going to rise as well. And the industry has gotten used to like 4 cents a kilowatt hour here in the Gulf Coast. You're not going to get that for low carbon power, especially if demand rises. So how, I guess, where do you find that low carbon power?
Well, I'll say that's just one piece of it. If you just rely on a PPA from a merchant renewable asset, prices are going to go up. Mm-hmm. But what's happening, as I always say, look, the cleanest and cheapest source of new energy is not consuming one of these light bulbs if prices in ERCOT are $9,000 a megawatt hour, which they were in Winter Storm Uri. We shut off the equivalent of a nuclear plant, and a customer that was a 300 megawatt load made $180 million not consuming power. Why? Because we were thoughtful in the way we organized that PPA, that they were incentivized to not consume at some price of power. So yes, it can be green, but what are you doing at the distribution level to conduct rate arbitrage against the utility in states where you can own private infrastructure? And then do you have enabled smart consumption on the back end? And I'm not talking about ancillary services or utility programs or signing up with Local Reliant and getting airline miles for giving them control of your thermostat. I'm talking about direct relationships with the supplier that at some price of power, I'm going to shut down non-essential load. And there's 20 to 30% waste across the country. It's a little bit better in Europe, but certainly here, none of the consumption going on in this general area understands what the price of power is right now. That's been housed by the utility. That's their call option. They shut our power off and we just suffer. So you can imagine one chemical facility who had non-essential pumps that could shut off, get paid the difference between 4 cents and 900 cents a kilowatt hour during Uri, and their neighbor didn't have that feature, and they sat there and suffered all week. And so that's going to be the new source of clean energy. And the net effect of that is, yes, the PPA price went up, but I created revenue that you can back test if you unlock those features. And you'll see that in any market, you're going to save 30 to 40% off the market rate. And that's what our business model is all about, putting that segmentation together for large C&I.
Yeah, that's helpful. So Brandon, I want to pick up a little bit on what Casey was saying earlier, right? There are some elements of the value chain in oil and gas, and I think this is what she was probably talking about with San Joaquin Valley, right? There's just not enough access to clean power, right? So what's happening? I mean, we hear that a lot, right? We just finished a piece of work on artificial lift and secondary tertiary recovery for due diligence piece, and what when we interviewed the operators in the space, in Permian and all of that, what we heard is that there are vast chunks of Permian where the quality of power is very poor. And then we did another piece of work where we were looking at deploying small modular nuclear reactors, and there was a lot of interesting end-use cases in places like that. So how do you electrify those places? Because if you could electrify it with clean power, then potentially it makes it easier to capture carbon. You then devote a lot of CCS resources into highly concentrated CO2 effluents coming out of the multiple industries, right? So I'm curious, like, is there an angle there? What are some options to kind of go after that?
The Permian's where we were born. That's we started our business in Midland in 1999. So if it's west of I-35, it's a good chance that we've been involved at some point in the past. I heard two things: resiliency and then access to renewable power. Power factor is an issue in the Permian. It's an issue in the Gulf Coast as well. I mean, you've got chemical plants feeding into a switchyard that also is fed into a residential neighborhood. Probably not the best combination, but you can't plan for the way loads grow as a utility, and it gets a little bit messy. Power factor quality when you're dealing with the utility is still kind of a first name basis, acronym rich, old way of doing things. And if you're a new entrant and you don't know your way around that landscape, I'm not eloquently describing it, but that is the utility world. You got to know who to call, and you need utility people to call utility people. And that's 25% of our business, is helping people, whether it's hooking up to the system, securing FEAs on capacity, or correcting power factor, and rolling trucks from the utility and getting them motivated to fix problems. On the renewable side, merchant plants, they're still being built. It's all solar right now. You're not seeing a whole lot of wind, but the congestion element has really hurt a lot of people, and it's scary. So you've got a merchant asset that's large. You've got operators all around in the Permian, and the merchant plant wants you to pick it up at the bus, but the load wants you to deliver it to the meter, and no one wants to hedge the basis after some of the congestion games that were played in financial products, and banks lost tons of money, and storage operators in Uri, and it's just been a really scary environment. Everything that we're doing today, and again, we're unbiased, so we're just trying to solve for the most economic way for people to solve their goals, is all behind the meter. So we've got about $1.5 billion of behind the meter solar assets being installed in the Permian right now. It will physically change the landscape of the Permian, just like the wind boom in 06 to 08 unfolded. If you drove through Sweetwater, Abilene in 2003, it was just ugly land. Now it's uglier. That was, we put all the wind turbines out there. Solar is going to have that physical effect. And the reason we do that is you build your own substation, you install the solar to meet 30%, 40% of your load. Both of those assets qualify for the ITC. The sub is 30% of the CapEx. And that typically meets someone's renewable goal. And then again, the factor of how do you wrap the overall energy needs around in a PPA from the market that's coming from a highly renewable area, and then how do you optimize consumption during price scarcity or congestion moments. And the net effect of that, we're still doing solar deals combined with those other elements and delivering power at 2 to 3 cents in a 4-cent market is kind of the net effect. So it is possible, but you've got to put all that segmentation together in a single strategy.
So then why aren't more people doing that? I mean, that's...
It's really hard.
Okay.
And there's just not a case study for it. Half my background's commodity trading, mostly the Texas market. And we put a room together of demand response people, utility people, electrical engineers, retail electric provider backgrounds. I like to use the example, if you and I wanted to build a green hydrogen plant, well, we need a site, so we got to go call Land Crews. Then we need infrastructure. We've got to go call Quanta or someone to build that, or Encore or CenterPoint. Then we need a PPA. I've got to call all the suppliers. Maybe we have a renewable mandate. I've got to call all the merchant solar developers and bid that out. Maybe what's demand response? I've got to call the LS portfolio company Sea Power. All that segmentation is working in their own self-interest off their same income statement, and that compounds the cost for me. And you're also not unlocking things like economic dispatch. A PPA, that's just a PPA is one thing, but back to the consumption curtailment, if I put a feature in the PPA that if I consume less than the block of power I bought, and it's automatically liquidated at the difference of the spot price and the PPA price, and I get 100% of those proceeds, then I can backtest that 1, 3, 5 years and even regress for Winter Storm Uri, and I'm going to create $10 a megawatt hour of revenue on top of my PPA, and that's what nets those costs down.
Brandon, so this is at least my thinking, and you can tell me where I'm wrong, but as we proliferate these power purchase agreements, as I guess electrification grows across various industrial segments, we're going to be talking about a lot more distributed power generation schemes and mechanisms. I mean, we are already struggling with reliability issues in large parts of the grid. If you read some of the books on the electric grid, they tell you about how these things are super old and there's not a lot of investment that has flown into it. So now as you electrify more, I mean, I would imagine that these issues are only going to magnify. Is that a good framework to think about this, or is there another way to think about it?
I mean, you can make it as scary as you want. Texas has got the load growth, obviously, and I can tell you I think there's still around 1,000 people a day moving to Texas. So it's not just power, it's concrete, it's water, it's traffic, it's hotel rooms. I mean, 3.5%, 4% load growth. And I don't think that trend's going to stop with what's going on in the U.S. and the general polarization of people. It's a really nice place to live, so I expect that to continue. On the power side, we will, I mean, think of our system as about an 82 gigawatt demand system. We're going to have over 30 gigawatts of solar built probably in the next 5 years. I mean, it's just a staggering number. So I see some volatility getting there, and then overall, the forward curves will go down. They're already backwardated, but if that much solar shows up, and with the passage of IRA, you've got all the tailwinds, supply chains are loosening up, we've got price certainty, we're getting readings from the IRS now on another 10% incentive for oil and gas. So it's coming, and when we get there, the issue is the commodities becoming less relevant on the bill. So the T&D rates are going to continue to escalate. You follow the power market, the governor and the PUC and ERCOT are working on new mechanisms to pass through charges to balance reliability and basically force pay generation that will come in and help balance the grid. So net, costs are going to go up, and I can tell you, even dated back to Rick Perry, and not being political at all, but you know, no matter what side of the aisle you on, we have campaigned our state of having cheap power for 20 years, and we built a lot of wind and renewables, and we have times when there are 60 to 70% renewables supplying our grid, and that's really scary, which takes transmission upgrades and all of that. So we're going to pay for that over the long run. But again, if you go back and look at all the segmentation and just balance, you can do better than picking up the phone and calling the utility for power. Where does all that end up, and are the lights going to go out again? I don't think so. Very mild winter, thank goodness. The day before Christmas, I was pretty concerned. Thank goodness the wind blew, because we were within about a gigawatt of losing power in some of the major cities on Christmas Eve. And that was Christmas Eve. There wasn't a whole lot of demand. So we get a hot summer, you know, we can have some issues. We're just going to have to wait and see. The governor gives me comfort. They're all over it. Senator Schwertner, which is a relative, is in charge of ERCOT market reform, which I'm a part of that task force as well. I think the state is doing a good job addressing it, but we can't stop the migration. So it's, I don't know if you've been to Austin on a Friday night in the last year, but it is literally an antbed of people. And I'm too old to live in Austin anymore. If you don't have a .io email address, you don't belong there. But it's, we'll see. It's a day-by-day thing. But prices overall are going to go up to the consumer.
So there was a power surge here yesterday, and the restaurant that we had booked for the speaker dinner canceled our reservation. Seasons 52 right across the thing. And so you know, I was on the panel here moderating when our forum producer Faiza sends me a note saying, hey, power surge, it got canceled. Then I said, did you tell them that Priority Power is our sponsor? And and she responded, dude, it's going to be easier for me to find another place for you to have dinner with. So
we could have found you another place for dinner, no problem. Yeah, power surge, I'm not quite so sure.